What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here from the Quartering, and we've got a bit of breaking news. If you remember everything that happened on the worst day in American history, worse than what happened to the towers, uh, we saw many American citizens, at least in my opinion, jailed for excessive amounts of time, politically charged sentences for what is essentially trespassing. Had they been Democrats, in my opinion, they would have called it fiery but mostly peaceful. But since our government got involved and decided that they had to make a big dog and pony show of it, they put these people in prison for years. Years. For simply walking around a building and, in many cases, being led or escorted by security. A few weeks ago, we saw Tucker Carlson release a bunch of footage that really drove home or re-drove home the point that many people already knew, that these people were, essentially, sure, they were trespassing. If people damaged property or, did this kind of stuff, give them a ticket like you would anybody else, okay? We saw people sentenced to immense prison time, including, of course, the famous QAnon Shaman, Jacob Chansley, got a 41-month sentence. The guy has been in jail for over 2 years. And he's not the only one. Over 2 years, this man was in prison for walking around a guided tour with security. And today, 14 months early, he was released. But there's actually a sinister reason why this may actually have happened. The so-called QAnon shaman who pled guilty to, quote, storming the Capitol on January 6th was released from prison to a halfway house 14 months before his sentence was due to end. Jacob Chansley, 35 years old, pleaded guilty in September of 2021 to civil disorder and bad entry to the Capitol, among other charges, was later sentenced to 41 months in federal prison. The reason he got that sentence was because of the way that he looked and what he represented. I don't think anybody could disagree with me on that. It's the same reason, on a broader scale, why men get longer sentences than women for the same crimes. This guy represented the movement, and therefore he was unduly punished, which is a miscarriage of justice. The whole world saw that when they saw him strolling around the Capitol, never once being stopped by anybody. In fact, having an escort the entire time. Now, as of Thursday, the Bureau of Prison Records show and his former attorney confirmed that Chansley was in a Phoenix halfway house after serving just under 27 months in prison total. Though Chansley's release comes weeks after his former attorney demanded he be freed in the light of new video, his move to the halfway house appears to be a matter of, quote, routine federal prison policy. We're going to talk about that. Federal inmates can receive a 15% reduction in their prison sentence for good behavior and can also serve the final 12 months of their sentences in halfway houses at the discretion of the Bureau of Prisons. In a statement to DailyMail.com, Albert S. Watkins, the attorney who handled Chansley's plea and sentencing, applauded his release from prison to the custody of a halfway house after serving 11 months in solitary. Again, this is for walking through a building after hours, essentially. After serving 11 months in solitary confinement, his sentence being imposed, and only 16 months of his sentence thereafter, it is appropriate this gentle and intelligent young man be permitted to move forward with the next stage of what is undoubtedly be a law-abiding and enriching life. I applaud the decision of the U.S. Bureau of Prison, and in this regard, a BOP spokesperson did not reply. Former federal prosecutor, though, Nia Maramani, the president of West Coast Trial Lawyers, told Daily Mail that it was unlikely the intense scrutiny on Chansley's case had any impact on the early release. I don't think it had anything to do with the media for public pressure, said Ramani, who is not connected with the case, despite the terrible nature of the riots. Most of those people had little to no criminal history. Then why was he given a 41-month sentence in the first place? Absolutely absurd. Earlier this month, Watkins had argued that Chansley should be freed after Fox News host Tucker Carlson aired previously unseen footage of the event. Carlson uses Fox News show to broadcast clips showing Chansley inside the U.S. Capitol, where he appeared to be escorted through the building by Capitol police officers while other officers allowed the chest-bearing, horn-wearing Trump supporter to pass. Carlson used the footage to argue that they were, quote, sightseers and mostly peaceful. Well, I would say that is true. I mean, people burned down car lots in Kenosha, and CNN called them mostly peaceful. Chansley pled guilty, obviously, so he was sentenced 2 months later to 3.5 years in federal prison, with the new footage leading to claims that he was unfairly portrayed as this terrible, maniacal intruder. On Wednesday night, Chansley's former lawyer said that he had not been shown the footage broadcast by Carlson, which the conservative news anchor said was clearly exculpatory. Watkins had previously said that his former client disavows the Q and all this kind of stuff. Now, here's the thing. This was brought up, and I want to give credit to where credit is due. This was brought up by Uncapped Turtle in response to this, saying people are missing the fact that the DOJ is releasing this person in an attempt to moot the writ of habeas corpus that would have exposed they violated his civil rights by withholding Brady material. He continues saying the focus will be on Tucker telling us what they were already saying on January 7th. And then someone else wrote, I see a ton of people with massive lawsuits in the future, and the Fed has known it all along. They did it deliberately to keep the narrative intact. It's not even their money. Why would they care? Every prosecutor should be disbarred, sort of like Reagan with the ATC. Now, a lot of the Twitter reaction, you see Sebastian Gorka writing, Jacob Chansley has been released 14 months early after Speaker McCarthy released the footage that proved he committed no crime. I do think that it is definitely related. I think that you would have to be one of the most disingenuous NPC morons to at least not believe that his sentence was way over the top. What he did, if he was doing that in the name of BLM, he would have been released the same day. Does anybody disagree with that? Let me know in the comment section down below. If he had been marching under pro-choice, for pro-choice, do you think he would have gotten 41 months in federal prison? I mean, there was a transurrection last night. We'll talk about that in a second. This is breaking QAnon Shaman. Jacob Chansley is freed from prison 14 months early after his lawyer said the footage showing him being escorted into Senate by cops was exculpatory. Of course, going on with Elon Musk, saying Chansley got 4 years in prison for a nonviolent police escorted tour. Dave Chappelle was attacked with a guy on stage by a guy with a knife. The guy got a $3,000 fine and no prison time. I mean, that's essentially it. You know, and I think that this footage, I believe that the federal government would have loved to keep him locked up. They would have loved to keep him locked up for the full extent of his sentence. This is by the Post-Millennial. Of course, it's not yet made clear why Chansley was released early. Now, they're trying to say that it's all routine, and maybe that's the case, but how many other political prisoners do we actually have out there, by the way? You know, the fact that he served 27 months in prison is a national disgrace. When you have this last night in Kentucky, 19 arrested as hundreds protest Kentucky lawmakers vote to override governor's veto of trans bill. 19 people were zip-tied, escorted out of the Kentucky Capitol, and arrested Wednesday. How many of them will be in prison tomorrow, do you think? Is the number rhyme with zero? They were in Frankfurt protesting a bill that the most intimate parts, of a youth's life, including access to gender-affirming medical care, using bathroom at school, and what name the teacher calls them. It happened as Kentucky lawmakers voted to override Governor Andy Beshear's veto of the Senate Bill 150, a sweeping GOP bill that curbs medical procedures on the young ones and limiting certain type of topics in Kentucky schools. In either chamber of the Kentucky Capitol, You had the group of 19, by the way, now arrested, now facing trespassing charges, the exact same thing that happened at the Capitol, right? At least 10 had been released from the Franklin County Jail by 9:30 last night. The very same night, at least half of them had already been released. This is what I'm talking about, right? This is exactly what I'm talking about. But the protests didn't stop lawmakers from moving forward to override the governor's veto. The House and Senate, both controlled by Republican supermajorities, easily set aside the governor's March 24th veto. The Senate voted 29-8 in a mostly party line vote. The House followed with a vote of 76-23. Kentucky children are now banned from lessons on, bedroom stuff until 6th grade, which I think is fine. But then only then with parent permission. No lessons on gender identity, orientation. I think that's all fine and dandy too. But you had this same, type of activity last night with at least half of them being released already last night, the other half probably by today. So this was one of the most embarrassing moments in American judicial history. And I'm glad the guy's free. He never deserved to go to prison in the first place. You want to tell me he needed to get a fine or 30 days community service? I'd agree. But it's time to admit that the footage released on Fox News is why the guy's free. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please make sure you leave a like on it. We'll talk to you again real soon.